welcome back to my channel. I'm Tiffany. We are talking middle grade March today, and oh my gosh, I'm really excited. I really love middle grade books. They are really amazing. I started reading middle grade more frequently because my daughter is a voracious reader, and so it initially started out as me pre-reading books for her because she's on the very lower end of middle grade. She's 8. So there are some books that are appropriate for her, but some that tackle more mature topics. You know, things like divorce and loss and are very like emotionally heavy that I didn't necessarily feel like she was ready for yet. So I started reading middle grade frequently because of that, but I stayed with middle grade because I love it. I love so many of the topics that middle grade tackles and makes accessible to the younger crowd, but is also just so gripping and heart-wrenching at times. I'll admit that my favorite middle grade books are ones that made me cry, typically. Middle Grade March is a challenge that is hosted by Katie, Krista, and Amanda. I will leave their channels in the description below so that way you can find them. They're all really amazing ladies, and they have lots of really great recommendations for the Middle Grade March prompts. So for all of these books, I found more than one book that could fit the prompts, and I really wanted to read all the books. I requested so many from my library. It was ridiculous. I went to the library today and picked up like 20 books. Some of them were middle grade and some of them weren't, but yeah, there was a lot of books waiting there for me. My librarians got to work out from all the books they were lifting. But anyways, I wanted to go through and talk about the books that I could select or might want to select for each of these prompts, and then I am going to try a chapter of these books to see which one is going to be my final pick. I will still have the other books laying around, so that way if I get to them, great, and if I don't, then whatever, but I'll have at least fulfilled my 5 prompts. So the first prompt is a book with a silhouette on the cover. And I actually only have 2 books for this. I have When You Reach Me by Rebecca Stead, and don't really know much about this. I think it's kind of a mystery style book. And then I also have Angel and Beaver by Amy Wilson. I'm not even sure how I heard of this book. I feel like it may have been like on Book Outlet or something, and the premise sounded intriguing, but it's about this girl who I believe comes to live in a new town, and she meets this boy, Beaver or Bavar, however you say that, who lives in an enchanted castle or an enchanted home of some sort. And I don't really know much more about it than that, but it does have a silhouette on the cover. And When You Reach Me is harder to find, but it's down there. So these are my 2 contenders for that spot. The next prompt is strong family or found family elements, and I haven't read any of these books, so I'm not for sure whether or not they actually have those elements, but based on the descriptions, I think that they do. The first one is The Unadaptables by Hannah Took, and this is about some kids who live at an orphanage and nobody wants to adopt them. I mean, from the cover, it kind of looks like it could have some magical elements to it, but I'm really not sure. But I think that they kind of become their own found family. At least that's my guess. I guess I don't know. The next one is historical fiction, and that's A Night Divided by Jennifer Nielsen. And this is about a girl and her family, I believe her brother and her mother, when the wall in Berlin is constructed. I have heard this book is unbelievable, so I really want to read this one. So I'm kind of hoping it falls into that prompt. I haven't read any other Jennifer Nielsen books though, so not for sure whether or not I will love her writing style, but I really wanted to read this book. The next one is kind of a more fun one, and that's The Detective's Assistant by Kate Hannigan. And this book is about a girl who is assisting her aunt, who has become the first lady detective. So the 2 of them are solving mysteries, and definitely strong family component there. Okay, the next one could go for this prompt or the next one, which is a book that includes travel or adventure, and that is Winter House. I have seen this book everywhere lately, it feels like. I feel like I have seen probably like at least 4 or 5 people recently discussing this book. So I actually just bought it for Amazon's like buy 3 for the price of 2 sale. So hopefully I'd like it because I bought it. But it's about this girl who goes and lives in this hotel. I guess she's an orphan and her aunt and uncle live there. Or do they? No, they ship her off. That's what it says. So I don't know. I don't know if it has family or found family elements in it or not. But I just wanted to read this one, so I had to include it on the stack. And the last book for this prompt is Journey to Joburg by Beverly Nadew. And this book is about a girl and her brother in South Africa, and I believe their sister gets sick. Yeah, and they have to travel to find someone who can help her. This book I could easily read because it is super thin, so this would be a good option for that one. The next prompt is a book that has travel or adventure in it. And the first book that I decided to put on the stack was The Wollstonecraft Detective Agency. This is book 1, The Case of the Missing Moonstone. I'm always on a search for good middle grade mystery books, so this one sounded good. I don't really know what it's about. I think it's about 2 girls who start their own detective agency, and there is a hot air balloon on the cover, so it looks like travel and adventure are definitely part of the plot. The next book is a highly acclaimed book, and that is Moon Over Manifest by Claire Vanderpool, and I don't know much about this book. I picked it up at a thrift store for like 50 cents or something like that, so I figured it couldn't hurt, and I believe it is it's a Newbery Award winner, so it was worth a try. And I believe this is about a girl who has to go spend a summer somewhere, and then there's a mystery that she has to solve, so it sounded pretty fun. The next book that I could potentially use for this prompt is Cogheart, and I know nothing about it. Actually, this is a Cogheart adventure on the top, so it's for sure an adventure story, and I think it's kind of like steampunk type deal, but I don't know. There's something about the cover that is just so intriguing to me, and I really wanted to read this one. The next prompt is a fairy tale retelling or has fairy tale elements. So the first book that I have on this list is actually another Jennifer Nielsen book, and that is The False Prince. It's about these, I guess, I don't know if like the actual genuine prince has died, but they're like these children, and somebody is training them all to imitate the prince, so that way one of them can succeed and be prince. I guess that is the worst description I have ever used to describe a book. I'm so sorry, but I know nothing about this book. I haven't read it. So yeah, but I've heard it's really good, and I think there's like 5 books in the series, or 4 or something. I don't know. I should stop talking. I don't even know what I'm talking about, obviously. But anyways, yeah, so this would work for fairy tale elements. The next 2 books are both Cinderella retellings. One is Ella Enchanted, which I feel like pretty much everyone has heard of this, especially since there was the movie with Anne Hathaway in it, which I loved, but I've never read the book. So, and it is a Cinderella retelling, but basically she's cursed at birth with the gift of obedience. And, you know, obedience can be a good thing, but not when you are forced to obey everyone's commands to you. So that's what this book is about. And the next one I have is Just Ella. This book was recommended by Murphy Napier, and it's about Cinderella after she marries the prince and has to go through this princess training, and she realizes that maybe this isn't exactly what she thought it would be. So it's kind of her disenchantment, so to speak, with her new life as a princess. So yeah, this is on my shelf, so I thought I would potentially use this one. And the last prompt is a book that was published in the decade you were born. And it's funny because I was really struggling to find books that sounded remotely good that had been published in the 80s. And then when I watched Katie, Krista, and Amanda's videos, they really struggled with it too, which made me feel so validated. I thought I was just like, why can't I find any good sounding book from the 80s? But I own 2, so we're gonna see if one of these will work. Well, one of them has to work, right? Because running out of options. The first one is The Sign of the Beaver by Elizabeth George Speer, and I believe this is about a boy, like a white boy and then a Native American boy, and I think maybe it's set in pioneer times, not totally sure, but I love Elizabeth George Speer. I especially love The Witch of Blackbird Ponds. That was a really excellent book, so I have high hopes for this one. And then the other one is one that is a very critically acclaimed book, and that is The Devil's Arithmetic by Jane Yellen. I have not read any Jane Yellen books, but I've heard really good things about this one. It takes place during World War II, and this book was actually published in 1988, which is my actual birth year. So I feel like this one wins some points for that. So that was a lot of books, as you can see. I didn't even count, but I should. So I am going to read a chapter of each of these books in this category and then choose which one I liked the best and make that my TBR for middle grade March. I'm back. I read a chapter of all those books and it kind of took me a little while, but we are back. So for the first category, which is a book with a silhouette on the cover, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really love the first chapter of either of these. Just didn't love the writing style as much, but I think I liked this one slightly better, so I think that this is the one that we're gonna go for that one. For the next prompt with a strong family element or found family element, I actually really liked all of the books in this category that I read the first chapter of and wanted to continue reading all of them. So maybe I'll get to all of them at some point this month. But my two favorite ones were The Detective's Assistant and A Night Divided. And I don't know how I'm gonna choose which one of these. I should probably just do an eeny, meeny, miny, mo, right? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by its toe. If he hollers, let him go. My mother told me to pick the very best one, and you are it. Guess we're going with A Night Divided. And I think it's the only historical fiction that I have, so it's probably good that I chose this one. The next prompt involved either travel or adventure, and I really liked the prologue of this story. I talked about how these 5 orphans were dropped off at the orphanage and how they were named and stuff, and I really liked this one. But I wanted to say I also really loved the Wollstonecraft Detective Agency. Why is that so hard for me to say? Anyways, it is a duo of girls, one being Mary Shelley and the other one being, well, I guess it's Mary Godwin because she's not married yet. The other one is Lady Ada Byron, and she's like a genius. So these are 2 actual women, but them in childhood. So that was really interesting. I did not know that that was going to be a part of the plot. So I think that for this one, I'm actually going to go with this book for that prompt. The next prompt was for a fairy tale retelling or a book with some fairy tale elements, and for that prompt I think I'm gonna go with Just Ella. I actually enjoyed the first chapter of all of the books that I read in this category, but this one made me want to keep reading the most, and it was actually one of the last books that I read in my big old stack of books, so that tells you that this one's pretty good. So I'm looking forward to reading more of this one. And the last prompt was a book published in the year that you were born, and for that one, I'm gonna go with The Sign of the Beaver. I enjoyed the first chapter of this. I really liked where it was going. So it's this boy who's 12, almost 13, and his dad and him built a cabin, and now his dad is going to go back and get his mother and his sisters while the son stays there and like basically protects the cabin. And I really liked the first chapter of this one. Whereas, I mean, I think I probably could like this one. The Devil's Arithmetic. In the beginning, it's about this girl who really doesn't want to go to like Passover Seder meal. And she's just tired of those things. And her mother's like, oh, well, we need to go because we want to honor your family, who this means a lot to them, especially because they were in like World War II for whatever reason. So that's the beginning chapter, and the protagonist is real whiny, and I'm sure that probably changes, but I don't know. This one was just more appealing to me. I forgot to mention also earlier that another book that is part of the Middle Grade March Challenge is called The Brave by James Byrd, and this is a group read. So everyone is reading this, and then they're gonna do some sort of like discussion about the book, and I don't really know much about the book except for it is about a boy who is half white and half Native American, and for the summer he goes and stays on the reservation with his Native American family. I'm pretty sure that's the premise of it, but I have requested that book from the library and I'm waiting for it to come in, but it hasn't yet. So this is my Middle Grade March stack, the official stack. I still have all these other books over here, and a lot of them are library books, so I will probably try to read them, particularly the ones that I really loved, because there were some of them that I wanted them to make it into the stack, but when you're forced to make a decision, you're forced to make a decision. So these are the 5 that I am officially including for my Middle Grade March TBR, but I'm sure I'll probably read more middle grade than that. So I would love to hear from you in the comments. Are you also participating in Middle Grade March? And if you are, what books did you choose for the prompts? If you're not participating in Middle Grade March, I would love to hear if any of the books I suggested are ones that you liked, or maybe other recommendations that you may have for me. If you liked this video, please hit like, and I would love it if you also subscribed. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.